We believe that men can be powerful forces for good in their communities. The True Coach podcast exists to equip coaches with the tools they need to prepare boys and young men for life.
Welcome to the True Coach podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about how boys are no longer being guided to become men. There's a significant lack in our culture, and then there's something that's happening where it's self-guidance. Boys are trying to do it themselves, and it's slowly becoming more catastrophic. We're beginning to notice it a lot more, and our culture is sort of anti-culture. So our rite of passage that boys have had in the past, it's slowly been disintegrating over time. So I kind of want to open the conversation for why are boys not being guided by intentional fathers into manhood?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I mean, I think the obvious answer to that is that there's one, either the fathers don't exist or they're not present, or two, the fathers that are present don't understand what it looks like to intentionally guide the young men in their lives or the boys in their lives, whether it's their sons or other people they're close to. If they're a coach, it might be their players that they're coaching, the young men they're coaching, that they don't understand themselves the significance of this period of time between the ages of 12 and 25 or so. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so one of the reasons that they might not understand it. So in the first episode, we talked about how we had this question about how do we raise our sons? So we had a good father. We grew up in a home where our father was present, where he was loving and he was emotionally engaged. There was still a lack of intentionality around how do we raise these boys to become men, and they're aware, they know that there's going to be a shift and a change in the way that they interact with the world around them and the way they behave and the expectations, the responsibility, all of that stuff. So, and that's not our father's fault. That's because he didn't get it. His father didn't get it. His father before him didn't get it. And who knows how many generations we go back where that wasn't received. Yeah. So there's a total cultural lack. We don't even know what the language is. Like if you were to ask the average person, what's a rite of passage? If you were to ask, here's another indicator that's kind of scary. If you were to ask the average person, what is male initiation? What do you think they would say to you if you asked them, what's the first thing that comes to mind when you hear the words male initiation?
Oh, that people I don't know, they went to university or something like that.
Yeah. So it would be, but it would be so there's been scandals. Ontario, Canada, there's a youth hockey. It's not youth. It's a junior hockey league called the Ontario Hockey League, and it's a very high level of hockey. So almost all the best players that are between the ages of 16 and 20, 21 play in this league. Yeah. And I remember as a kid hearing about these stories of initiations that the boys on the hockey team did, and they would strip the rookies naked and shove them in all together and shove them in a little tiny bathroom on their coach bus when they had a 4-hour drive to the next city to play a game. And that was their and they do all kinds of gross stuff to them. And this stuff, these rookies who went through the program and finished their hockey careers, they realized, oh, that was really traumatizing for you. And then they started whistleblowing on this stuff.
Yeah.
So when I think of male initiation, I think of men abusing each other. That's what I think about, and that's actually the opposite of what male initiation was, why it existed. Like you're in this frame, in this culture, if you ask that question, and I don't know that everybody thinks this is just my framework, but even using that term initiation, I hesitate to use it because I'm like, what are people associating that word with?
Yeah, it's usually quite negative because of how it's been constructed in our culture and thinking of things. Like when you go to university, the same thing happens when you get accepted into your dorm. It's just like weird stuff that is actually quite, like, it's kind of ridiculous, but yeah.
So if you think about it, instead of being initiated into manhood, surrounded by a community of men who love you and who are not going to let you be comfortable, but are going to ensure that you're safe, and that if you are harmed, it's going to be, not life-threatening or not traumatizing. One of the things with trauma is if you experience a traumatic event and you have nobody around you to process that event with, it sticks with you your whole life. If you experience a traumatic event and you have a community of people who are with you and who you can talk to and process that event with, you can heal from that, and it won't have a long-term effect on you. So like initiation rites, historically, culturally, could be because of the stakes. The stakes are so high. If you're talking about a tribal culture or a hunter-gatherer culture, the need for men to be able to hunt is so important that if they don't learn to do that, and they don't learn that when you go and hunt, the food that you get is you don't get to eat it first. You're going to bring it back to your community, and you're going to serve your family.
Yeah, it's bigger than just you.
Yeah,
it's beyond you now.
Yeah, so if you don't learn that, then what's going to happen? The community is going to break down. The sustenance is going to stop. So the significance of the Rite of Passage is so elevated in that context. I would argue it's just as elevated. It's just that the consequences are different.
Yeah.
So instead of bringing young men along through an intentional guided process where love is at the center, where we know that these young men are going to be a valued, significant part of our society, and we have to treat them like that. We have to treat them like they are the future. Instead of that, at its worst, we've shifted into traumatizing young men into manhood, which is the opposite of what we should be doing. So we're actually starting them off in a deficit. We're not only do we have a void of real understanding and real practice of initiation, male initiation or rites of passage, we actually have a deficit because men are entering into their adult years traumatized because of relationships with their peers, even high school experiences, bullying. You think about all that kind of stuff. They're actually entering their adult years traumatized, and then they're expected. Now all of a sudden, you've got to be, if you want to have a family or have a life that you might consider to be normal that you dreamed of when you were younger, you got to become a protector, provider. You got to serve your family and your community, and you're coming from this place of extreme deficit. So that's the first. I think the first issue is we don't have, and this runs, I think, a lot deeper, culturally, spiritually, emotionally. This problem runs a lot deeper. It's like a fundamental issue with how we understand and how we relate to each other. But in the context of like masculinity, manhood, it's created, there's a huge void in boys. It instinctively are going to look for approval from men in their lives. And if they don't have it, where are they going to look? They're going to look to their peers. If their peers also don't have good men in their lives, then what's our frame of reference? Like, what are we looking at? Like TV, I don't know, TV, like what's their influence? Like, so it could be anything.
Yeah. And I think the one thing that I've really noticed is talking to a lot of fathers is I would be considered a younger dad being in my early mid 30s to have an 11-year-old. And so most of the fathers that I'm around when I'm coaching are all in their late 30s, early 40s, sometimes 50s. So they've had a little more life ahead of them. And when I bring up these conversations about the rite of passage and male initiation, just wanting to have our boys become men, they completely understand it. And most of the people that I, am around have, had a pretty good life. Like they had fathers who cared. Most of the time they had fathers that were around, or they had a father figure in their life that they could point out if somebody asked. But there was something missing. And really when they became, like an older teenager, bled into their early 20s, that intentionality sort of disappeared, because the moment they moved out, the fathers at home were like, okay, I hope I've done enough, and not to their fault. But then these fathers are now having kids, and they're beginning to see the gap in what they've been feeling for the last 10, 15, 20 years. And they're like, oh, like, I don't want my kid to go through the same things I had to go through. I want to be a guide. I want to really help them. Because something that have spoken about is like, boys don't become men by mistake. And when they try to do it on their own, you have this result of like self-guidance is what happened. So the one thing that I'm curious about, break down the self-guidance for me. Like, is that like boys growing up, they're probably, moved out of their home, and they're trying to find somebody to become a man, but they feel like they have to do it on their own.
Yeah. So I think there's a good illustration just to kind of frame that discussion, because it's what is it in the heart of a boy or a man? Like, there's something that needs to be tended to. There's something that needs to be nurtured and stewarded. And if it doesn't get nurtured and stewarded, then things like the question you're asking is what happens when they self-initiate? Mm-hmm. So what kind of activities and behaviors, like we were saying before, in the absence of fathers, in the absence of fathers who are intentional or are good men in their lives, where are they looking to find that standard of a healthy, whole, loving man? So one of the things is to think about it like men have this fire in them, and that fire has to be stewarded. It has to be cared for. If it's not cared for, it's dangerous. You think about the strength of a grown man. They can be very powerful, and if they're angry and if they have rage, then that strength, that fire in them, can be explosive and can be damaging to their entire community and to the whole architecture of their lives. Like, they can burn their whole life down with that. So the question is, okay, what we're asking is, okay, what happens when the fire is intended? What happens when the fire burns out of control?
Yeah, when there's no guidance.
Yeah. So, you can look at, like, one of the statistics to look at is like fatherlessness. So not every boy who grows up in a fatherless home is represented in these statistics, because some boys who grow up in fatherless homes actually find mentors, big brothers, big sisters, or they find there's some man in their neighborhood or community or coach that kind of takes them under their wing. And if that happens, they're fine. If that happens, they're still gonna have to deal with the father wound, but in terms of the statistics that show the long-term outcomes, they're going to be okay. Versus kids who grow up in environments where the father's not there and they really don't have another man that's taken an interest in them and to help them become a man themselves. So one of the most prevalent stats is poverty. So kids who grow up in environments boys who grow up in environments where the father's absent are 4 times more likely to be in poverty throughout the duration of their life than somebody who's not. The other thing is suicidality. So there's 62% more likely to commit suicide. I don't have the statistic in front of me, but I think it's something like 70 to 80% somewhere in there of men in prison. There's something, fatherlessness exists in their background somewhere. And then,
Right.
So then you start looking at like how widespread is this issue? So just with fathers who are not at home, like living with their son or living with their family, in the US it's 1 in 4, so that's like 20 million growing up without a dad in the home.
Yeah.
So that's a huge number, and that is actually, and I think it's probably similar in Canada, like the percentage,
Right.
between 20 and 25%. Around the world, this isn't the case. It's like between 5 and 7% around the world. So like you could talk about what happens when they self-initiate, which is violence, bullying, sexual exploits, hypersexualization, anything that makes them stand out, or what they're doing is they're just trying to be approved. So when you have
they become vulnerable.
Because
they're just trying. Yeah.
When you have an unhealthy environment, the thing you need to do to be approved is perverted. Like it's like twisted. Right. It's not like they, boys seek approval, and as fathers, we give them approval, right? Just because they exist. But there's also this other side to it where, as a father and even as a coach, when I'm coaching, there's goals that we have. There are things that we're trying to do as a team, and if we fail those things, it's not going to change my approval of them. I'm still going to approve of them. I'm still going to be proud of them, even if we don't accomplish what we wanted to accomplish. But if we accomplish that thing, of course they're going to feel like, whoa, coach is really proud of us. He's really like, and it doesn't mean that I'm not proud of them when they don't do it, but there is like that need to, creating like frameworks and environments where you don't have to work for approval. But when we know we set goals and we accomplish them, there is like a positive, there's a benefit to that. So yeah, I think, just to kind of wrap up the thought, I guess is if you want to look at what the consequences of self-guidance are, look at the leaders of our economic systems, look at the leaders of our justice systems, look at the leaders of our political systems, look at the state of the world, right? People, dysfunctional men invading countries with $100 billion military and dropping bombs on apartment buildings. Like that's writ large. Like that's what this looks like. A man who is a man who is fully formed and healthy understands, like, my role as a man is to generate life, create life, and steward it and nurture it, not to take it. That's not my role as a man. So I think, just look around you. And you know what? The same thing is true on the flip side. Like, there's a lot of good in the world. So, and women are responsible for much of that good, and men are responsible for much of that good. So look around you, same thing, and look at all the good.
Yeah, that's huge as a coach, because again, when I talk to these fathers, when I talk to these coaches, like, they want to create life. When you speak like that, they're like, yes, like that is something that I, as a father, want to do. I want to create life. And when you have your little team on the grand scheme of things, maybe it's 15 boys on this team and there's a few coaches on the bench. Like, that is such a small amount of people relevant to the rest of the world, but you're using just this little hub of influence to show these boys, like, hey, we are here doing this sport and we are trying to do these things. We're trying to win this tournament that's upcoming. We're trying to, make it to the playoffs this season. And that's like an intentional target that you, as the coaches and the kids, are going to hit. And they know that you're going to do that. And you are proud of them regardless, just because they exist. But you're also, you have this intention together to hit this target. And you are there to create life. It doesn't mean that as coaches we just sit back and be like, hey, thanks for showing up. This is all we're going to do. I'm so proud of you. It's like, no, like that's the point of true coach. It's like, okay, this is an opportunity. This is the beginning for the rite of passage. Like, hey, we're going to do this thing and we're going to make mistakes along the way. But when you get there, I'm going to acknowledge all the work that you've done. And then as a team, once you accomplish something, sometimes it is that tournament, sometimes it's making it to the playoffs, whatever the little milestones are in the season, like that's huge. And that's like the team taking a step. And then within that team, you have all these little individuals who are on their own journey, whereas a coach, you're intentionally guiding them through their own specific journeys, which is all just a part of like the one really big rite of passage, which is just one of the coolest things that we can do as a father and as a coach.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, like you talked about, guiding each individual through this and getting to know them on a personal level, on a deeper level, and getting to know like what makes them tick. So I think the reason for that, at least this is how I understand it, and this is how I've operated as a coach, is I gotta draw what's best out of you, like your best qualities. I want to draw them out. And in order to do that, I need to like hit on a nerve. I need to get you to like be as intense as you possibly can be, because I need to see what's in there.
Yeah.
I need to see what you got in there. So there's this kid we were playing on the weekend, and we, as coaches, we were playing in a tournament that's 2 divisions up from where we are. So it's at a high AA level, and our team is at a low AA level. So there's mid and then there's high. And so we're going 2 levels up, and we go into it and we know like this is going to be really hard. And so anyway, we played 4 games. We lost all of them. They were all close games, all really hard fought games. So we played 3 games the first day, and we were just our legs were gone.
Yeah.
After the first quarter in the third game, we were playing a team that was very fast, and they were full court pressing us, and so we were down by 30 something after the first half. So there's a kid who I know he has this fire in him. I know, but I just don't see it enough, and so he doesn't get a lot of playing time because I don't see the level of intensity that's where it needs to be all the time. Because we play teams where you start, and if you start at an 8, if it's the urgency meter is a 10 and you start at an 8, you're going to be down 10 points within 2 minutes. And if you keep that up, it's 20 points within 4 minutes. And you keep that up, the game's over after the first quarter. So we're like down by 30 plus, and I'm like, okay, third game of the day, we played 2 very hard fought games. The second game we played was the most physical game we played all year. Very intense. There was several there was shoving, and there was like technical fouls. None on the coaches, but there were other.
Yeah. You lost it, didn't you?
There was a few moments where I had to really gather myself, but so like they're emotionally spent, and so I go to this kid. I'm like, we need to win. I said it to the whole team, but we need to win the second half. I don't care what happens the rest of the way, but we're down like it was like 32 points. Let's come back and win the second half. And so I had we have one guy that I play probably, if 32-minute games, I probably play him 28 minutes out of the 34. He's our best player. He's our strongest player physically. Probably not quite our tallest, but he was spent. So I'm like, I got to sit him. We got a game tomorrow. I'm going to sit him. And this other kid who doesn't have the urgency all the time, but he's our tallest player. I'm like, I need to get. So I went up to him and I put my hand on his chest. I said, there's fire in there. I know it's in there. I've seen it before. I need you to bring it every second on the court. I'm going to play you the whole second half. And he was amazing. He got every rebound that got within his reach, he got it. He had several really, really good, ran the court really well, played good defense, and he just loved it. Like, he was so happy. But he changed after that. We played the next game, same thing, same aggression, intensity. But I found it. I found the key, which is to remind him, hey, you got a fire in there. I need you to let it out. And then last night at practice, he's shoving and pushing his own teammates. I'm like, hey, you got. So speaking of like the fire that you have to tend, right? Like, I had to stop practice and like pull a few of them aside. Like, you can't do that in a game. You can't do that in practice. You got to love each other, even though you might be angry at each other. But it's just an example of like the level of getting to know the kids that you're coaching, so that you can, just like you would your own son, so that you can intentionally guide them. So that we talked about, intentionally guiding, rites of passage, and in order to do that stuff, you've got to know your players, and so you got to kind of know what makes them tick and what makes them upset, and what makes them happy and all that stuff. So, but that takes time, takes effort and time.
It does, and it takes a lot of intentionally like listening to your kids and talking with the coaches. But I think when something like that happens, it's so cool because you can even, depending on the relationship you have with the families outside of the team, you can talk to the parents about like, hey, this happened. Like, I found something. I'm not sure if you've ever noticed this in your kid. And then you can be like, I put my hand on its chest. Because there were lots of little things that sounded like you did there that would have made him like, oh, this is out of the normal. Like, coach is like, he's got his hand over my heart right now. And like, and when you said like, you have a fire in there, like you are touching his soul, more or less, and be like, because that's where the fire comes from. It comes from the soul of the player, right? And you're like, you are tending that fire that you see is way too dormant and the fire's too cold. So you're like kind of blowing on those coals with that, and you found a way to do that. And as a kid, you said like he just went out and he had a ton of fun. And that's something that I say a lot to my kids on the teams is, guys, play with some joy. And how do we have fun when we play? We play hard. Because I've never seen a kid have fun when they're just out there like sauntering around on the ice, just like coasting or on the court. But each kid has to find the way there. And that's what a good, intentional guide, coach, or father can do, is they can steward that fire. And all kids are different, and you got to figure out how to churn that up. And we had a tournament with my oldest team, so they're all like 9 and 10. It was U11, and it was really cool. We were in a tournament playing the number 1 B team in Ontario. They hadn't lost a game that entire season. We're like sort of bottom of the B teams at this point, and we were expected to sort of stay on the bottom as a team. And our season went really well, and we rose up the ranks. So we played this team, and it was a similar situation. I believe it was the last game of the day, and we don't have any hot shots on our team. We don't have any kids that can really carry it end to end, and nor do we encourage that either. And we're like, hey guys, this is the best team that we're probably going to play all season. We might not win, but it doesn't really matter because we are here to work as a team. And we let them know, like, we cannot do this alone. And so we played, and we ended up losing. I don't know, it was a tight game. It was like 3-2, and these guys were just like, where did this team come from? Because their stats don't show this, because we had a lot of games prior where this as coaches, we're learning the team, we're trying to fire them up, and you can find an individual, but it's hard to find the whole team, which is a whole other can of worms. But we managed to get the team fired up, and they made it a competitive, hard, good hockey game. Even though the kids were tired, they were bagged from all the skating, but so are the other teams as well, right? Mm-hmm. And it's just like, when you're coaching your guys, the lesson that they learn right from the moment that they start to be coached properly is you cannot do this alone. Your teammates, you're going to be doing this with them. They're going to build you up. And you, as the coaches, we are here to tend to that fire in you, because you can't tend your own fire. Like if I call the fire out of you and then you just go insane and burn everything down, then that just gets a little bit out of control. And you're like, oh crap, what did I do after looking back on the path of destruction that you made? And it's like back to kind of the original question, which was self-guidance. That's like such a huge part in those influential years that a good guide and coach can do. Is these kids know from the very beginning that I can't do this alone. Why would I try to guide myself into becoming a man alone? Like that's just, it's not even a part of their vocabulary anymore, because they know that like men have to be there guiding them.
Yeah. So one of the things that came to me when you were talking was Frederick Douglass has a quote. So Frederick Douglass was I don't know how you'd refer to him.
Never heard of him.
Very influential figure, African-American man. I believe he was during like post-Civil War, or maybe even before that, actually. Anyway, he was like a philosopher, maybe a sociologist or something like that. He's a very educated man, and had a huge influence, not just in the United States but all over the world. I know he visit I know Ireland was one of the places where he went a lot, and they'd host huge speaking engagements for him there. But one of the things he said was, it's easier to build strong children, strong boys, young men, than to repair broken men. So it's easier to build strong boys, strong young men, than to repair broken men. And so that's really like, we have to get in at this level. We have to get in at this level where we have this opportunity, and it's not easy to do, but it's fun to do. And it's like, it exists in this short period, this window of time, that I honestly think one of the reasons why men have struggled to guide their own sons with intention, and to teach them and model to them intentionally what it is to be a man. I think it's just because it's like life happens quick. Yeah. I don't know that that's always true, but I think if you're not paying attention, if you've got a lot going on in your life, and it's just like, my son is 12 and now he's 19, and it just happened. Like, I'm sure most parents, if you talk to who have a 19-year-old or older, would say, "Oh yeah, that's kind of how it went. Like it went quickly." And so there's a limited window. And can broken men be repaired? Yeah, they can be. They can be repaired. But the point of the quote is that there's a lot of, number one, collateral damage that happens when a man gets into his adult, late 20s, early 30s. That's usually the time when he's gonna settle down and have kids. And so if that man is broken, there's some collateral damage that happens. They talked about tending the fire. If the fire hasn't been tended, then the fire can burn people around him. I don't know how many times just in the circle of people I know or have been friends with, where when a man gets to be 40, if they haven't walked you might call it a dark night of the soul, or gone through a difficult experience where they've been broken and they've had to heal from it. If they haven't gone through that, Robert Bly, who was one of the earlier writers, it was actually in response to the feminism of the 1960s, not in opposition to it, but in, hey, women are learning so much about themselves. I think men should probably take it upon ourselves to learn about ourselves and what we need to be healthy people. So he was one of the kind of leaders of this movement, the men's movement or men's work. There's different ways to different monikers for it. But one of the things he said was that if a man hasn't gone through a dark night of the soul, by the time they're 40 years old, they will have to walk the road of ashes. So again, with that fire metaphor, the fire burns down their world, and you got to go walk back through it, because you've created a whole life. You may be a married man, you may have children, and there's going to be some ashes that everybody's going to live in for a while, and that's because of the. It's not always just one person. In the men that I know who've done that, they actually had the ability to right the ship, or to tend their own fire, to keep with that analogy, and for whatever reason, they just couldn't do it. It just was like they couldn't see what was really going on inside themselves. I don't know whether it's pride or shame or whatever it was that kept them from seeing that, but they just couldn't see it. So an initiation rite or rite of passage, it's actually a simulation for when a man is grown and starts to go through hard things in life. So what you're doing is you're building capacity in their soul to be able to hold all the tension and all of it. Being a dad to 3 boys, you're pulled in all these different directions. It's you wouldn't ask for it to be different. It's a wonderful thing. It's a beautiful thing. But if you don't know how to hold all that, and to be like, I can take care of myself. I'm okay. And I can give out of the overflow that I have, But if you're in tension inside yourself and you feel like you've got nothing to give and you've got 3 kids, that's not going to go very well. And so what it is a rite of passage. When we coach, we make it super hard. We don't make it hard for the sake of hard. We make it hard because life is hard.
Yeah.
And the more you learn to do hard things, and the better you learn to do hard things, the harder things you can do, and the better you can become at whatever it is you're doing. So that's how you develop excellence and expertise at anything. You look at some of the top NBA players, Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan. These guys are great examples of not only they were not they're very good athletes, but they weren't the best athletes in the league. They're better athletes who played basketball who had no pro careers. And the differentiator is that Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan and a lot of these top guys, they didn't stop doing hard things. They kept making it harder and harder and harder and harder. And then it kind of becomes fun. Like you talked about earlier, right? Like having fun is doing hard things well.
Yeah.
So we have to actually create, and you can push to different levels of intensity based on the age of the kids. So if you're coaching college level kids, the leash is shorter, the accountability is higher, responsibility is higher. For me, coaching 12-year-olds, they have a lot more leash to mess up and to maybe slack off a little bit. Doesn't mean I tolerate it. I make sure they know, hey, there's probably every 3 games, I would say at least, where during a timeout, I'm like, guys, your urgency is at a 5 here. We need it to be at a 10. So I had to remind them, but I'm not if I'm coaching 22-year-olds, I'm like, if your urgency is at a 9 and you're on the court, you come off. I'm going to put a guy on whose urgency is at a 10.
Yeah.
So yeah, all that to say, it's a simulation. Every game can act like a rite of passage, which is an experience that pushes a young man or a boy up against what they feel is possible, and then helps guide them through it.
Yeah.
So every game can be like that, and every game you can build character. You can build. It's more than that, though. It's a an understanding of who they are, their identity as, hey, I've done this before. I've pushed myself up to the edge of what I thought was possible, and I've gone through it.
Yeah.
And that's a huge gift to give any person. But that's as a coach, we actually have that opportunity to be able to guide them intentionally through that, and that's going to show up when they're 35 years old.
Yeah, because things will happen. It doesn't matter who you are, how good your life was prior to that. Like, things are going to happen, and if we can use that little sweet spot of age to help equip them with the tools, because as we know, sports is a simulation of how hard life is going to get. And so if we can give them these tools, and then, when they're 25, 30, 35, like, something is going to happen in that time, and then they're going to be faced with the monster, and they got to do something with it, right? And if they know that, like, okay, like, I have this fire, I can do this. This is not easy, but I can do this, and I understand the power of community. And so they need to have a father or a guy that they can lean on when these things get hard. And you mentioned it in the beginning. It's like, if something catastrophic happens to you, that can damage you. And if you're not ready for that, that can damage you for a very long time. But if you have the right tools and the right guides and coaches and fathers in your life, then you can use that for the good. Like, and it goes all the way back to, like, a spiritual level. Like, it doesn't matter how bad it is. At some point, you're hopefully ever going to look back, and that has done. Not only are you healed, but you are better because of it. Or the other side, you're just miserable, and you're 65 years old, and you're like, oh man, I'm still just playing video games every single night because I'm coasting because of when I got hurt 30 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, huge. And that's just, it's just one of the coolest opportunities. And the one thing I'm curious is, on the last episode, we did speak about how boys are confronting things a lot quicker now, whereas it might have happened when they were 15. Now it's happening when they're 11 or 12. It's just, I mean, it's a really interesting thing, but, like, why do we think it's that small 8-ish year window that is so integral? Like why those years?
Yeah, so I'm not a social scientist. I'm not a anthropologist, a sociologist, or a psychologist. I'm not.
Thought you were.
So because I think this answer is probably a combination of cultural, social, and psychological reasons, right? Like your biological development, your cognitive development, right? You there's a reason why, boys historically weren't initiated when they were 6 years old. There's a reason for that. Humans, we have the longest, it takes us the longest to mature, the longest maturation process out of any mammal. So to reach maturity, it's like men are like 20, in their mid to late 20s before they become fully cognitively mature. So I think it's a combination of just like I think an age of accountability, an age where I recognize the consequences of my behaviors, of my actions.
Right.
And then there's added responsibility, and then there's a physical maturation that makes a boy into a man, and a man is physically can cause harm. And so there's that, when you're 17, 18, that's when you and immediately it's into your mid 20s, but there needs to be that needs to be caught before it gets to that point. Like you have to experience these lessons before you are fully physically and cognitively mature, right? Mm-hmm. So, and I'm sure there are reasons around, like, the life of a family, the life of a community, a culture that contribute to why that window is there. But, and you know what? I think, like, yes, I think that there is a window somewhere between the age, and I think in some contexts it starts earlier. I know Jason Wilson starts at 8 years old in Detroit with the karate club that he runs there. It's called the Cave of Agilum. Yeah. Which is a really, really cool work that he's doing there. I'm not sure why he starts at 8. I think it's partly because he has a wait list of 800 kids, so he kind of has to narrow the age range. And I part of me wonders if the boys who he's bringing in are just experiencing life's hitting them that much quicker. So he needs to get to them at a younger age. There may be another reason that I'm just not cluing in on, but
yeah, and I think one thing that I've noticed is in our culture of social media and constantly comparing yourselves to people, you're like, oh, if it's sports, I got to get my kid ahead of the curve. So dads are like pushing their kids so young. I remember I read something about Tiger Woods when I was in grade 6. I did a little study up on it, and his dad pushed him like stupid hard from an extremely young age. And now when we're on social media, we'll see so-and-so is pushing their kid, and they're doing these crazy complex edge work drills on their hockey skates, and they're 8. And I'm like 30 and he can skate better than me. And then I look at my 8-year-old, I'm like, oh, you're not as good as him. Do I have to push you to the brink? And so now people are like pushing their kids into places that are really hard, probably too young.
Yeah.
But if so many kids are being pushed there, and maybe the fathers and the coaches don't understand that, well, you should probably ease up. Like, these kids just need to have fun. They got a lot of life left to get good at this sport. Then that's where True Coach can really bring some guidance to the coaches of how hard can I push an 8-year-old? How hard can I push a 15 or an 18-year-old?
Yeah, you're right about like the culture of youth sports. It's like over the top. Like,
yeah,
I got 12-year-old kids who are being recruited by different programs, and will use language like, oh, I'm going to sign with that program.
Yeah.
Like, do you have an agent? You're 12.
Yeah.
Like,
settle down, everybody.
This is totally ridiculous. You're like, the chances of you making it professionally, like we talked about last time, it's so slim. It's not that, like, try. Sure, go ahead and try. That's great. You should try.
Yeah.
You should give your absolute best effort. But at a certain point, it kind of becomes dysfunctional. Like, for me, it's I want parents who are on board. I want parents who see what we're doing and understand what we're doing.
Yeah.
They know we're running a program that is centered around nurturing and caring for these boys, and that we are interested in their development as human beings first, and we're using basketball as a tool, and it means they're going to get better at both.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, just find somewhere like that. Just go somewhere where the coach is emotionally regulated. Honestly, a lot of times it's there's a dad who's coaching. There's a little more investment. There are so many good coaches. I coached against a guy. It was actually our really physical game on the weekend, and I talked to him afterwards because we were intense competitors, both of us, and so we really respect each other. And we'd played them once before, and he came up to me afterwards and told me they were up by 17, and we came back. We closed the gap within 5. We ended up losing by 10. But he told me, like, I told my guys that you guys were going to come back because of how you play, and I knew you were going. You did.
Yeah.
And then he starts talking about, hey, like, this is about a lot more than sports.
Yeah.
Because he could see it in me, how I was coaching them, and I could see it in him, and he's intense. And he's got his players lined up on the bench, and he goes before the game even starts, and he's doing like a chant with them, and they're getting all pumped up and hyped, and my guys are like looking over at him, getting afraid because they're so intense, right? I'm like, but the point is, like, he's telling me, I got 6 kids that single mothers, and I had to help pay their registration. Like, he's like, I have a kid here too, but I understand that my son grows up with those boys in the same school, in the same community. It's in my best interest to take care of them. Yeah. To help them have this kind of experience, to help them grow in life, and make sure that they have positive male role models when they don't have a dad at home. Because I know it's going to contribute to the community. Like, I'm like, man, it's so awesome that there are men out there who are doing this. And I think True Coach, the objective is to make this scalable and widespread, for any coach to be able to pick it up and be able to, because this guy, he was mid-50s, this guy. So it was his youngest. His oldest is, probably, graduated high school, maybe in university. Yeah. So he's been coaching for a long time. He's had a lot of experience at this. And so I think we can fast track it for even younger coaches, and
totally,
they can learn how to be able to really develop boys and intentionally guide them into manhood.
Yeah, because there's so many coaches who, if it's hockey, they would make it to the OHL, the Ontario Hockey League, and even most guys, you have to be stupid good to make it that far, and most of them don't even make it to the NHL. And so, I think they retire from the OHL at the age of 20 or 21, and then they have the choice of maybe going to the American Hockey League, maybe go play some European hockey, or they're put in a situation of, maybe I could go coach some AAA teams. And then, so by that time, like they're pretty young. Like some of them are 25 when they're starting to coach these kids. And serious AAA, where we are, starts at the age of 9 and goes all the way up to 18. And so you can get a good handful of men who do not have their own children on the team. They might not even be married or have any of their own kids. And so, but I'm sure that they had really good coaches that they learned from growing up, and they have their own intuition. All coaches have their own intuition on how they're going to do things, and that's so important, because you're right, like there's so many good coaches out there, but how many of them understand the importance of what they're doing? And that's definitely something that we're going to be communicating, and hopefully people will begin to understand. But you're right, like the moment people hear about it, they're like completely on board. They fully get it. And that's just the coolest part, is we could sit here and talk about the problem and the crisis that's in our culture today, but I think we see it on massive scales to small scales in our community, and there's really no point in talking about it. But it's like there are so many good people who are willing and see the need in their community to help raise these boys so that it really affects generation after generation. And it's just, such a huge opportunity for coaches. So I think we'll wrap it up there. And that's just such a good conversation on, yes, we are aware of the problem, but there's so many good coaches, so many good fathers and guiders out there that understand that the fire needs to be tended to help these boys navigate the hardships of life that are going to constantly come their way, so that they can be healed after these hard things happen. And sports are just a little simulation and a really sweet spot in their life from a really young age to when they move out of their home.
Thank you for listening to the True Coach podcast. Boys need good men to help lead them through adversity. Youth sports serve as a forum for life lessons, and coaches must be prepared to help them prosper both in sports and in life.